Well, hey everybody, I am so excited to be with you today as we are kicking off a brand new series with you entitled One Step. And I think this particular series has the potential to change the way not only we see ourselves and others, but also it has the potential to change the way we see our role in the world. Now, before we get into it, I want to ask you a question. Have you ever known somebody who enjoys running marathons? Now, I don't know about you, but the thought to me of running a full 26.2 miles doesn't really sound that fun. And not only does that not sound fun, but even walking 26.2 miles doesn't sound that great. But chances are, if you know somebody who enjoys running marathons or who just enjoys running in general, you probably know they put in a lot of work to get to where they are. You can't just show up on race day without any kind of training or plan or endurance to run the race. I mean, I suppose you could, but you probably shouldn't because it's not going to end well. So to successfully run a race like a marathon, you have to prepare. You have to train. You have to stay strong. You have to be brave enough to keep going. Because that's how marathons are run, by putting one foot in front of the other over and over again. In other words, by going one step at a time. Now, here's the good news for you. We're not training for a marathon together over the next 4 weeks. But we are going to talk about another part of our lives that takes a lot of strength and endurance and courage. It's something that requires us to take one step at a time to move towards a better tomorrow. And that is the work to see justice in this world. Now, before we go any further, I want to make sure that we're all on the same page, because chances are when you just heard me mention the word justice, particular thoughts started coming into your mind and you started to have certain kind of things going through your head. So I want to define justice this way, that justice means something is right, fair, or equal. Something that is right, fair, or equal. That's how we're going to define justice. And when we talk about justice, we're talking about moving towards a world where things are better for everyone. And ultimately, what we're going to be talking about through this series is working against injustice, which we're going to define this way, which is things that are unfair, unequal, or not right in the world. So injustice is things that are unfair, unequal, and when things are not right in the world. And that's what we're going to talk about throughout this series. Now, for some of you, I know that this conversation about justice and injustice, it isn't a new thing. Injustice is something that for many of you, maybe you've experienced, whether it's related to topics like race or disability, neurodiversity, based on what you do or don't have, or maybe something else altogether. You see, injustice and the need for justice is something that's a big part of the world around us. And maybe for some of you who've experienced injustice, I want you just to know, I hate the fact that you had to go through that. I know it's not easy. And I hope that this conversation will help us all work together alongside one another to take a step forward to making a better tomorrow. Now, for others of you, this may be a different way of seeing things. Because of course you understand that the world can sometimes be unfair or wrong or difficult. And when you've seen or experienced things like that personally, you probably feel pretty awful. You've had that sinking feeling in the pit of your stomach, or the anger that makes you tighten your fist, or the frustration that leaves you feeling defeated. Those are all signs that you've seen or experienced something that isn't right. Now let me show you what I mean here. You may know this about me, that I'm a huge baseball fan. I love baseball. I always have, and I understand it's not for everybody. But in 2017, the Houston Astros won the World Series, and that was a big deal for them. But a few years later, the excitement of them winning the World Series had died down because the league figured out that this particular team had been cheating the entire season leading up to their win. What they did is they strategically placed cameras in center field. And the team would watch the signals that were given from the opposing team's catcher to the pitcher to know what pitches were about to be thrown. And as they did this, they saw the signs. The players would, signal to the people in the dugout, hey, this is what pitch is coming. And they've developed this code to bang on a trash can in the dugout so the pitchers at bat, or the players at bat rather, would know what pitch was coming their way. So for example, if it was a fastball, they'd bang on the trash can once. Or if it was a changeup, it was twice. A curveball was 3 times. And I don't know about you, but if I was any player on any other team in the league that year, watching the Astros win the World Series by cheating would have felt like a pretty big injustice. Now, for many of us, we're never going to know what it's going to feel like to lose the World Series in general, let alone to lose it because the other team cheated. We probably won't know what that's going to feel like, but we may know what it feels like when we lose the highest grade on our math test to the kid who always cheats on their test. Or to have to give up after-school sports or activities because our family can't afford them now because our parents lost their job. Or to see the unhoused population in our community growing. Or to see war breaking out in different parts of the world. Or to be treated differently solely based on on your race or ability or the way you look. You see, those feelings that we experience in response to all this stuff, those are signals that we need to recognize injustice that's happening to us or around us. Those signals are calling somebody, anybody, just to take a step towards justice. And what if I told you that person could be you? That right now, as a middle schooler, you have the potential to do something about the hurts and the wrongs and the unfair things that you see and experience in the world around you. That you can take the first step today towards having a better tomorrow. And here's the good news, is we aren't the first people to need a little bit of help to opening our eyes to the needs for justice in our world. And I think that's the reason that Jesus made a habit of pointing out things that people didn't always see or notice before. You see, so much of his ministry here on earth was about helping people see the world through his eyes. And today, we're going to look at a time that he did just that. Now, as we know, Jesus had several disciples, and one of those disciples was a guy named Matthew, who literally experienced life with Jesus. And as Matthew got to experience life with Jesus, he saw and he wrote down a lot of what he witnessed Jesus do. And as we read his account of Jesus' life, it's from somebody who experienced it firsthand. And in this particular encounter that we're going to look at today, Jesus was trying to help people who were listening to him understand that part of following him meant seeing and caring about injustices in the world. And so to do that, Jesus compared the righteous people to the unrighteous people. Now, when we talk about righteous people, we're talking about people who are doing good and who want to help others. But the unrighteous, well, they do the opposite. And so with that in mind, let's look at what Jesus said here today. This is from Matthew 25. He said these words. He says, "Then the king will say to those on his right, 'Come, you who are blessed by my Father. Take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me.' Then the righteous will answer him, 'Lord, when did we see you hungry? Or when did we feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you in prison, sick or in prison, and go visit you?'" So maybe as you hear that passage, you're thinking the same thing that the people who heard it for the first time when Jesus spoke it were thinking. Which is, what is Jesus talking about here? Well, Jesus answers them in the very next verse. He says, "The king will reply, 'Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me.'" Now, did you catch that? Jesus is basically saying here that righteous people are looking for and they see ways to fight for justice around them. They care about the least of these, which are those people who need the most help, who feel the most pain, and who've received the worst treatment. The righteous people are ones who recognize when somebody's hungry or in prison or sick or left out. They see the injustice in the way that people are treated and they care. Why? Because caring for those who are treated as less than, or caring for those who are left out, they're showing people this is what God cares about. They're showing people the love that God gives them. And Jesus was reminding his followers here that they're called to look for people who need the most help, who feel the most pain, who get the worst treatment. And whether or not you're a follower of Jesus or you're still trying to figure this whole faith thing out, it's important for all of us because we all want a better tomorrow. We all want wrongs to be made right. We want things to be fair and good and equal. We want justice, and God wants that too. And it starts with just one step, or in our case, one question, which is simply this: where can you move toward justice? You see, the truth is, there's injustice happening all around us all the time, and many of us are aware of that. And I know that for many of us, injustices are happening to us. And no matter what your circumstances are, we're all in a position to take a step, one step towards justice, both for ourselves and for the people around us. And that first step may simply be just following Jesus' lead, to open our eyes, to see the wrong things in the world for what they really are, which are injustices. So where can you and I move towards justice? Well, the answer for this is going to be different for each and every one of us, and that's okay. But to start, I want to give you a few steps that you can take to move towards justice right now. So each week, we're going to give you a small step, a next step, and a big step. And we encourage you to take these steps throughout the week. So for today, the small step is maybe you just need to take a small step in the direction of justice. And for you, that may mean this: opening your eyes to see the injustices around you for the first time or in a new way. Maybe your first move is to recognize the variety of wrongs in the world, and not just the ones that you've seen up close or already, but be curious to learn about other people's experiences. Pay attention to the way you feel when you see or experience things that are unfair or wrong. Don't turn your head. Don't close your eyes. Instead, ask God to help you see the hearts of the people, to see the reality of the injustices that are happening, which are probably more numerous than we've even realized. So that's the small step. The next step is maybe for some of you who are ready to take the next step. And maybe you say, I'm going to speak up, or I'm going to step in, or I'm going to, start fighting for justice. So take time this week to consider what injustices you're witnessing or experiencing, and come up with a few next steps that you can take to help move towards justice in those areas. So if you're seeing injustice, it might be time for you to lean into Jesus' call to his followers, to speak up and to help. And when you recognize a wrong, what's one thing you can do right now to help make it right? Do you need to speak up or step in? And if you're experiencing injustice yourself, maybe your first step is to simply tell somebody. It's to ask for help. And if you can, put a voice to what you're experiencing so it can potentially be stopped. And then finally, the big step. Those of you that are ready to take a big step towards justice, think about the practical things you know you can do to move towards justice. Maybe it starts by asking yourself these questions. What is that thing that breaks your heart because it's not right, or it's unfair, or it's unequal? Or who is that person that you need to have a conversation with? Or what is your big step? And what do you need to do to take it? And challenge yourself to take a big step towards a better tomorrow today for the people around you who need it, and maybe even for yourself. Now, I just want to be clear. I'm not asking for you to come up with a solution to end things like poverty or racism or war forever. But I do believe that you, an incredible community of middle schoolers, can take enough steps in the right direction to start moving us towards justice. So I'm encouraging us all to consider our one step this week by asking this question. Where can you move towards justice? Where can you move towards justice? And one of the best places you can start doing this is when we gather together in person and we have our small groups. Now, we created these groups to be a safe place for you to listen, to ask questions, to encourage other people to do something in this world, and to do it together. If you're experiencing injustice, working for justice, or just seeing the variety of injustices in our world in a new way, I hope that you'll share more with somebody else today about those things. And as we wrap up, I want you to think about this particular question. What's one step you can take to move towards justice? What's one step you can take to move towards justice? Well, thank you so much for checking out this first installment of our series, One Step. We hope that you'll not only join us here virtually over the next 3 weeks as we continue to unpack this topic, but that you would join us in person. We meet on Sunday nights from 6 to 8 p.m. in the youth room here at New Hope Church, and we'd love to have you join us so that we can talk about this and so that we can pair you up with a small group and with a leader who desires to help see you grow and challenge your faith and to combat injustices that we all face in the world today. So we hope that this message has been beneficial, and we hope that you'll begin to take maybe a first step or a next step or a big step this week to start to fight for justice in your world. Because we do genuinely believe that your generation has the potential to work together to make a great impact in our world today. And so we hope that you'll start doing that, and we hope that you'll join us in person next Sunday as we gather together again from 6 to 8 p.m. in the youth room here at New Hope Church. Have a great and wonderful rest of your day, and we hope to see you soon.